Total Fit is a concept which is different to, for example, CrossFit or other exercise platforms, because they have this view that training the body in isolation is not enough. And so Total Fit, from my limited experience with it, is really about training the mind, body, and spirit.
It is holistic. That's the word that we like to use, because I mean, we exist as human beings, mind, body, and spirit, and all three need to be addressed. And so the system that's been developed is just that.
And so you went from the Marine Corps to being a pastor. And why did you choose to be a pastor?
I got introduced to an organization that was starting churches outside of military bases. And so here's this opportunity to serve a community that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
In more than just helping them grow in, just life, but in a spiritual way. That really spoke to me and to my wife. Like, I heard the vision for it. I said, we need to be a part of this. I don't know what that looks like. I had no designs on being a pastor necessarily, but that was obviously the path that God had for me. And so I pursued it. And that was 2 years before I retired. We started a church outside of the base that I was stationed at. And so the transition time came for me to retire, and it kind of just made sense to take over vocationally and continue down that path.
Hello and welcome back to the Inwards and Onwards podcast. Finally, we have our third episode, and today we have a very special guest, and I'm very excited to chat with him. His name is Trace, and Trace is a former Marine. He is a pastor. He's from America and he lives there. And we're going to be talking about his journey and specifically Totalfit Defense. Totalfit Defense is a new concept that is related to martial arts, but is actually very different than the traditional way that we would think of martial arts. It's a movement which has a sister organization, Totalfit. So it's an expansion from that, where their vision is that people can train, develop, and nurture their mind, body, and spirit through exercise, but not only exercise. They're very innovative with the way that they lead the sessions and the way that they try to inspire their members to have a lifestyle change. And I think that's super powerful, because if you spend an hour training per week, you're less than 1% of your week there that you're committing to your training. And so if we can affect the other 99% of your week, that's when it starts to become very powerful as a community and as an individual experience. So Totalfit Defense adds another component. We're training with exercise. We have this mind, body, and spirit, but the part of defending yourself and the amazing tools that we have when we train self-defense, I think those are a really good complement to the core Totalfit principles. And so Totalfit Defense is something that I've been very fortunate to be involved with a little bit. I've met Trace a couple times in Istanbul, and today we're going to talk about that. Totalfit Defense uses Choi Kwando techniques as their self-defense component. And so obviously my background is from Choi Kwando, and that's why I was very interested. I was also interested because the people who they have from Choi Kwando who are involved in Totalfit Defense are the cream of the crop. They are really, really good. So it's an exciting project to be involved in, and I'm really grateful to get a chance to have a chat with Trace about it. Right, guys, I'd like to introduce you to our guest today, Trace Martinez. Here he is. Trace, welcome to Malaysia.
Man, it's so great to be here.
How's your journey been? It's a very far way to travel.
It is a long way from home, to say the least, but it's been good, man. Yeah, this is my second stop on my journey. Spent some time in Thailand with some of the Totalfit guys, like you mentioned, and now I'm here.
So tell us a little bit about your journey so far. You've arrived from Thailand. You were in Chiang Rai. Can you tell us what were you doing there?
Yeah, so we had what we called an instructor summit. So all of the level 1 Totalfit instructors gathers about 40 different people from 14 different countries. So practitioners of Totalfit getting together and sort of evaluating where we are as an organization, looking at some of the materials, adjusting, constantly trying to grow and improve and develop. And so, yeah, we spent 4 days, four full days working out together, planning, coordinating, eating, and just enjoying each other. There was a gym up there that is doing Totalfit in Chiang Rai. That's why we gathered there, and it was super productive and just really encouraging.
Fantastic. And so Totalfit is a concept which is different to, for example, CrossFit or other exercise platforms, because they have this view that training the body in isolation is not enough. And it's a more limited scope when you look at that. And so Totalfit, from my limited experience with it, is really about training the mind, body, and spirit. And so can you tell us, you've just come from Chiang Rai, what does that really look like in terms of how you spend your time?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is holistic. That's the word that we like to use, because, I mean, we exist as human beings, mind, body, and spirit, and all three need to be addressed. And so the system that's been developed is just that. It's a program using fitness as the primary vehicle for, obviously, the body side, where we're training, we're lifting weights, we're cardio, the whole nine that you would expect in a regular workout. And then infused in that, along the way, during our sessions together, there's a theme that sort of runs through that has some questions that accompany it, that kind of begin to engage the mind a little bit, begin to engage the spirit, like purpose, why are we doing what we're doing, transitions into the workout, and then we finish as with a cool down. There's a story, always a story at the end where we're asking questions, getting people to think a little bit deeper about, just some key topics that are going to hopefully encourage them to grow in these other areas that sometimes get neglected. Man, people don't think about, resilience or working through struggles and difficulties, community, all these things that really matter just beyond the physical. So we have, we call it Totalfit Stamp, which is kind of our program that incorporates all these different aspects in one session.
And going into a little bit of detail, so I remember when my first experience with Totalfit, there was one thing we had to do was spend time in nature. We had to do some daily reading, and there was a journaling component. For people who think of signing up for a fitness class, these are really out of place for the status quo. So can you tell us a little bit about that side? Because I think that will help people understand how does this spiritual component, which is so abstract, how it really materializes.
Yeah, no, you're right. People come and they think, I'm going to get an hour-long workout. And you can do that on a lot of places, and you can address one aspect of your being. So what we like to do is create what we call healthy lifestyle habits. So that's the last piece or component of our gathering is, here's the monthly habit. Let's say we're going to address some aspect of like the spiritual component. Let's say 10 minutes a day, you're going to do some kind of meditation, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's going out in nature, going on a walk, sitting in prayer, contemplation. And then we're going to ask you what practical steps you're going to take in order to incorporate that into your daily rhythms. So part of this is accountability. It's not just, here's a good idea, yeah, maybe you take it, maybe you don't. If we're going to see lives transformed, there has to be tangible steps. So the example you gave was, okay, I got to go and journal 10 minutes per day. That was an active step to begin to develop the healthy habit. And these things lead toward small steps and changes in all three components. So the healthy habit can be spiritually based, it could be in the physical, it could be in the mental. Maybe it's read 10 pages from a book. Maybe it's begin learning a language. So that changes monthly, and it's always designed to take tangible steps toward growth. And that's the holistic nature of it. And so when people come in and they're not expecting that, it's actually well received, because they begin to see, man, I'm out of balance. We want to create balance. You think of like a tripod, I'm looking at the camera tripod. You got 3 legs. If one of them's out of balance, things are just not going to work right. And so we try to paint the picture that all three are necessary, and here's how you begin to take shape of the areas that are less obvious and less clear, like the mind and the spirit.
Yeah, I think from my personal journey, if you observe a standard, for me personally, I care a lot about my spiritual life, and I have done for some time. And so I would say, right, I want to have some disciplines. It can be a bit overwhelming to say, well, I need to do so many things, right? And now there's a lot of memes and talk about, these Instagram influencer lifestyles where I wake up at 5 a.m. Well, I wake up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I have an extra 2 hours than you. And the reference points that we have can be quite unrealistic for people. They can be very far from where they are now. And I think that one of the big challenges that people have if they want to start to improve their lifestyle or have a better balance in their lifestyle, start to replace negative habits with positive habits, it can be really overwhelming and it can be very difficult. It can be very difficult to start. And the shame, the sad part is that some people feel helpless in the sense that there's too much to do and they can be overwhelmed by that. So I think it's immensely positive to have a structure, to do it in bite-sized pieces. Yeah. And it's not some random structure either. It's based on research and understanding of how to build habits, how to transform lifestyles. And if you transform lifestyles, you're going to transform lives.
There you go.
And so we've spoken a little bit there about what really is Totalfit and Totalfit Defense. So your roots are in California. You were born there. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and then your career and how you've gotten to where you are today?
Sure. Yeah, grew up in Southern California, just north of Los Angeles. Pretty average childhood. My mother's from Denmark, so I've spent some time traveling. Fortunate to be able to see parts of the world very early on. I actually lived in Saudi Arabia for a couple of years in the late 80s, which was quite a formative experience. Was going to some martial arts classes, Tung Sudo in Southern California for several years, pre-high school, and then made a transition into gymnastics, actually. Loved gymnastics, taught gymnastics for a number of years. Graduated high school, tried my hand at college, did not do well at all, just was not disciplined, just not focused. And so the other option was get a job somewhere or join the military. And a friend of mine had decided to join, and I was like, well, I can't think of anything better, so let me try that. Turned out to be the best decision I ever made, honestly. Really, the progression of my life as I began to look back and see everything how it unfolded, the genesis of all that was joining the Marine Corps. Really found my niche there. The structure, just the mission, everything about it really resonated with me. And so joined, went to school, got to my first duty station and met a young lady who was also in the military and fell in love, as the story goes, right? And got married fairly young and immediately became pregnant. So we were married, and 9 months and 1 day later, our son was born.
Congratulations.
So not wasting any time with that.
Yeah.
And then she made a difficult decision to get out. She loved the Marine Corps, but having two parents in the active duty sector is really difficult. So she got out. And really at that point of our journey, starting as a young family, she did grow up kind of with a faith background, and I did not. And she wanted her kids, our kids, to have the same experiences and options as she had. And so she wanted to start going into a church kind of mode. And I was hesitant, honestly, at first. I didn't grow up with that, but that was sort of the first big transition for me, was trying to incorporate that into my life. And, that became a lifestyle for me. As I kind of surrendered to that and gave my life to that, it shifted kind of the mindset, the priorities. And from that point forward, we did everything together as we traveled throughout the military. I was in for 20 years, all said and done. So a lot of different duty stations, lived all over the world, but always together, always doing things with our family. You only have yourself sometimes that you're traveling around the world. In the military, though, as we're talking and transitioning more toward maybe the martial arts side, was I didn't do anything for the first maybe 10 years. And then I got introduced to what's called the Marine Corps Martial Arts Program. Quickly became involved in becoming an instructor. And so I worked my way up through the belt system, became a black belt, went to school, became an instructor. And that's a high emphasis on self-defense. It's a combat martial arts, taking a variety of different styles and putting them together for combat, any mind, any weapon kind of thing. So yeah, I gave myself to that and enjoyed the training a lot. Really tried to incorporate that into everything that I did, because it's not just about defending physical threats. All that's a big part of it, but just the spiritual journey started to play a role in that, and just engaging my mind. I actually went back to college while I was already in, and that helped kind of get me on a path toward growing in the mental capacity in that regard. And then came the decision to see what was next, and retirement out of the military, which, as you can imagine, is a huge step.
Yeah. What do I do? Where do I have to be? Yeah.
I went from literally every day written out, like a plan of the day. You're going to be here at this time. You're going to wear this. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, good. I can do that.
Yeah.
To the next day, nothing. I'm embarrassed to say a little bit. It took me way longer than I thought it should have to make that transition, like a couple of years, to figure out how do I organize my life, because I didn't go into a 9-to-5. I went Friday, retiring from the Marine Corps, into vocational ministry.
Right.
So the thing on my calendar is Sunday, go to church.
Yeah.
And nothing in between. And that was a big struggle for me.
And so you went from the Marine Corps to being a pastor. And why did you choose to be a pastor?
I got introduced to an organization that was starting churches outside of military bases. And so here's this opportunity to serve a community that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
In more than just helping them grow in, just life, but in a spiritual way. That really spoke to me and to my wife. Like, I heard the vision for it. I said, we need to be a part of this. I don't know what that looks like. I had no designs on being a pastor necessarily, but that was obviously the path that God had for me. And so I pursued it. And that was 2 years before I retired. We started a church outside of the base that I was stationed at. And so the transition time came for me to retire, and it kind of just made sense to take over vocationally and continue down that path.
And that's 20 years you've been part of a community, and now you continue to be part of that community in a different role. Is that right?
100%. Yeah, I'm on base all the time, meeting with young military couples, young singles who are away from home for the first time. There's so much opportunity to help people make that transition from sort of young adulthood into manhood or womanhood, and there's just not a lot of things that the military offers in terms of those kinds of resources. It's job performance, sure, but how do you actually learn how to be a human being in the military?
So your holistic view of inspiring and helping people, maybe that's a key moment there, right? Because that's where you say there's the main stream of military life and the infrastructure that they have. In your role, you're looking at how do you help them in a much broader sense, right? And working on these soft components that often people don't talk about.
Yep.
Like you mentioned, moving around to new countries and being away from your families. These are not easy.
No,
these are not easy. And so that seems like a really fulfilling role to play.
100%.
Have you loved it?
I have loved it at times. It's been the most difficult thing I've done, I think. Just because, there's an entrepreneurial aspect of it where you're starting something new. In our context, it's very transitory. Guys are there for 2-3 years maybe, and so there's sort of this revolving door thing. So you're trying to build this thing as it's as it's taking shape, and then it's transitioning. And so it's been really, really difficult, but exceptionally rewarding. And as I look back, I see how all these different components at different times in my life have kind of come in to influence me personally on my journey, whether that's through the martial arts early on or through the Marine Corps martial arts, through the spiritual component. Now I'm back in school. I'm seeing how mind, body, spirit are actually coming into vision little by little. So now I'm at this point where I have an opportunity to explore something else like Totalfit Defense. It was like a light bulb, like more than a light bulb, like a spot, like all these things are converging in this opportunity.
Yeah, it's one space where so many different components of your life that can seem unrelated kind of converge. And so you're coming at Totalfit Defense from a childhood doing martial arts, doing Tang Soo Do, the marine martial art program, is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
And then being a pastor and having that spiritual leadership role in people's lives. And for me, what was interesting is I've been growing up in martial arts. I'm about as orthodox Choi Kwan Do as you can get. But for me, the vision and the role has always been, well, people don't train that much. They only train once or twice a week. The kicking and punching are the tools, but ultimately what we want to do is improve other areas of people's lives. That's where we're going to create a lot of value. And that's why we call it the martial art for life. It's not just about longevity, it's about utility.
Yeah.
It should be the development that we have in our controlled environments and controlled spaces and safe spaces. They can then hopefully have some positive impact in other areas, which arguably are more important.
I agree.
It's not the be all and end all. It's a vehicle. It's a vehicle for sure, most definitely. And so I'm really interested in this marine martial art program. I want to nerd out about it for a minute or two. So I have two students here who are Swedish, and one of them is a veteran. He did multiple tours of Afghanistan, and another one was in the police. And so they're both highly trained. They're both scary. They are actually terrifying. Lovely, terrifying. And for them, it's been fantastic coaching them. It's been a really good experience. I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to coach them at this stage of my journey because they're advanced, and the way that they've trained is a bit different than the kind of normal martial art people that you meet. One of them is that fight or flight reflex. So what they had was a training style which was life or death, and it's always like that. So their stress level would be super high in training. And that's what I mean by terrifying. They can really mobilize all the aggression and intensity. But is that really what you want for an hour with your son? Right? Or is that how you want to relax after a tiring week? Is that what you want to do all the time? Well, the answer is no. They don't want to do it all the time.
Yep.
So was the Marine Corps martial art program, was that also super high intensity, really like a stressful environment? Or how was that experience?
I would say it's a little bit more well-rounded. There's certainly components of that because it is a combat-based martial art that by nature has to have some of that involved. So the idea of preparing people for combat. So there's different components of that where we have like octagon sort of styles where you're literally going against each other. Well, they throw a knife on the ground and a weapon of opportunity. So there's constant opportunities to have to evolve and adapt, right? So I think that's sort of the fight or flight component. It's like, what's around me right now? That's a very big part of the program is what is a weapon of opportunity and how can I leverage that against my opponent?
Sounds incredible.
It's awesome. Like,
oh my gosh.
It takes the best of probably a dozen different styles. So you've got some Krav Maga in there, you got some Jiu-Jitsu, you've got some Judo. So taking people to the ground, there's weapons disarmament, there's rifle bayonet kind of techniques, and everything in between. It's a really neat program. And of course, there's an element, I think, maybe of some of the mind, like you're wanting to sharpen your mind and be thinking and programming certain things to help people grow in those areas, but certainly nothing in the spiritual component. But I really liked it. We actually trained a lot in the desert in Iraq, just because sometimes there was not a lot to do, and so we would just train up and go to town, like. Every time mortars going off here and there, but it was something for us that was real world. Like, we're in a place right now that we could actually use this, and we're going to, as much as we can, get a real world experience of this.
Mate, that is such a huge challenge for martial arts. Is how do we make it relevant? And the dojang or dojo, whatever space you're in, is such an artificial environment, right? In terms of it's a controlled space, you always have the right footwear, you always have the right clothing, you always have a partner who's going to attack you with some sort of move that you recognize, you always know who your opponent is. You know, these are a lot of the variables that are, for martial arts, have always been one of the challenges. And I'm super interested in how can we develop skills that people could actually use to defend themselves. And so I'm dealing with civilians, right? And so I'm focused on kidnapping. How do I help people defend against that? Bullying at school. Those are the primary two. And then the kind of indirect, give people a bit of a aura of confidence that they have the tools and they're capable. We give them the belief. And so that's my kind of main priorities. With the Marine martial art program, Marine Corps martial art program, is that something that's it's a straight transition into civilian life? I mean, bayonet fixing and so on, it sounds incredible, but it doesn't sound like everyone would be using it.
No, it's not. It's not a direct. Of course, certain components of that. A lot of the guys really enjoy ground fighting. You know, so that's a fairly decent portion of the curriculum, if you will, for the program. And so a lot of guys will get out and they'll go into a BJJ gym somewhere, and that'll be their thing.
Right.
But by and large, it's very much focused on sort of this combat mindset. And so, unless you have that material or you you want to maintain that mindset, a lot of guys will just kind of look for other options, I think, to explore something that they really enjoyed.
Yeah, I think it's the students who you're working with. So my dad, for example, he's been working on oil and gas. And his thing with Choi Kwando was to have a class for his colleagues. So he used to do an office space, like the fitness center next to the office. He used to do a little lunchtime session. That was his modus operandi for forever, basically. He's only really taught adults. And it was always engineers, which already is getting quite niche, right? All of a particular age group. And so that, and I've taught classes in his sessions before, and you just have to know, okay, I'm going to have to warm them up appropriately and in the same sort of way. And then we're going to have to cool down. We're going to have to be careful not to peak too high, because you've got people here who could really go for it and pull a muscle. So you're working with, in that context, a really specific group of people. In a normal martial art class, actually, we have a bit more diversity. And it depends on the school, how you set up your programs and how you make your groups. I'm used to working with all sorts of ages, all sorts of ranges. And so with the Marine Corps martial art program, you're dealing with service personnel, right? And so the civilians, they're a totally different niche. You know, people who have a less active lifestyle, they have a lower baseline fitness, and they have other competing priorities. So what's it been like then? You've been so involved with military personnel. Totalfit Defense is not a concept specifically for the military. It's got a different audience. So why is it? Is that a reason that you went for Totalfit Defense over the Marine Corps martial art program? It kind of seems like it's a thing. But what's it been like in terms of the audience for Totalfit Defense?
I think a big part of it is just practicality. Like, most of that stuff is not going to be practical to the typical civilian. So just seeing an opportunity to, like you talk about, broaden the audience, like that's my main goal. If I want to see lives transformed, I need a wider front door.
Yeah.
And then that's, I think, what Totalfit Defense offers, because it's very practical, kind of what you talked about, like kidnapping and just confidence building. So for me, that's the thing right there is accessibility to everyone. We're training everyday people. And that's the beauty of the system.
Fantastic. Let's take a break there, and we'll come back in a moment. Right, guys, let's have a little chat about Totalfit Defense and what's it taken from Choi Kwando and how's it different? I think that's, for Choi Kwando people, that's a very interesting question. So with martial arts broadly, there's a status quo, and people have a lot of preconceptions. Either they're going to wear some sort of fighting pajamas, there's going to be a belt system, there's going to be some Japanese or Korean names for things. And so these somehow are kind of barriers, right? There's already some flexibility about the space that people use. But I think that Totalfit Defense has a different view. And that's one of the things that's really interesting to me. It has a different view of your training experience, right? And so in terms of the social part of training, people are not all wearing the same uniform. It's not always in a dedicated space. Sometimes it's outdoor. So can you tell us a little bit about the social part of the Totalfit Defense training and how it's unique? You've got a background in martial arts, obviously. You've experienced different types of martial arts settings. So what's the unique value?
That's one of the things I love the most about it, is that when you talk about self-defense, people, like you said, they come thinking a certain thing. So I try to adjust the language accordingly. We're not raising up martial artists. We're not preparing athletes for competition.
Yeah.
We're everyday people coming together, and that automatically just sort of levels the playing field. So you don't have to come with some prepared material or some level of expectation. I think it's been really helpful because we've got moms, we've got kids, we've got older adults, so it seems more accessible to people just by how it's set up. And like you mentioned outdoors, most of my stuff is outside. I'm meeting at a park. People are watching what we're doing. They're coming over like, hey, what are y'all doing? Oh, we're doing some self-defense training and some fitness classes. And they're looking at us and like, oh, I could do that. Like they can put themselves quickly into that setting and start, like we've had people roll up and go, I'll do that right away. So I think it eliminates a lot of the barriers and helps people quickly assimilate into that setting.
Mm-hmm. When you're working on such a broad base, because you have these different priorities, right? Mind, body, and spirit. It's holistic training, which naturally means it's going to be a broader set of criteria that you're developing. One of the challenges I have is people come, they do their first class, they see and they say, everyone is so good already, right? And I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet with that. That's their perspective.
Sure.
Because they're external. It looks like everything's running smoothly. People know so many different moves already. And sometimes it's a little bit extravagant. Sometimes it's a little extra, but it's really focused on the martial arts side, right? With Choi Kwando classes. When you've got people in shorts and t-shirt doing a variety of exercises, including a very important fitness component and a spiritual component, which is going to take the form of discussions and stories and so on. These are more accessible, I think, for people. And ultimately, you're developing the really important skills, but you're not focused so much on them, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the aesthetic that can make it seem harder for people to get into. And so the moves that you are working with, why is it Choi Kwando that are the techniques, the patterns, and the self-defense skills? Why are they all from Choi Kwando?
It's a fantastic question. There's so many options, right?
Yeah. It could be Taekwondo, it could be karate, it could be Kung Fu, it could be Jiu-Jitsu. There's so many.
Yeah. If we're looking to develop a lifelong pattern for people to live healthy lives for as long as they can, and we need a system that was developed to protect, preserve, that's designed to help people do this for a lifetime. And as we looked at options that were out there, CKD, that's the whole genesis of that program. It's like biomechanics, joint preservation, like all these kinds of things. So it was actually quite clear. One of the guys who helped start it was just an incredible Taekwondo master, right? And had plagued with injuries, like hip problems, elbow joint, like it could barely walk, right? And then transitioned to CKD and saw this tremendous improvement. So he was all in, like we've got to use this system. And when I saw it, I was like, absolutely, that makes 100% sense in my mind. And so for us, it's a no-brainer.
And so if you compare Choi Kwando to the more traditional styles, and I'm someone who talks a lot about how Taekwondo is a cultural, very, very important cultural phenomenon, but Choi Kwando is a scientific one, right? And so the Choi Kwando movements, they're based on the development and understanding that happened in the 70s, the emerging field of sports science, and the movements are based on anatomy, understandings of anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, right? And you spoke about the longevity aspect, and not only in the movements, but in the self-defense training philosophy of Choi Kwando, it is different to systems like Krav Maga or maybe the Marine Corps martial art program in that it's a gentler practice, and it has to be to have that sustainability and that longevity to it. But what is the practicality of that? So that's going to be the counterbalance, right? That's the cost. You have to weigh it against that. Yeah. So how do you see, in terms of practical applications and with your experience of teaching Choi Kwando moves as a Totalfit Defense instructor? Do you see them with practical skills?
100%. Yeah, no, there's no question in my mind. Not only do people who have no martial art background immediately appreciate, because we talk about that. Well, this is the reason why we're using these moves. This is why you don't ever fully extend your joint. This is why we talk about sequential motion. It registers with them. Like, okay, like let's get behind this. So from my perspective, like, what's the goal? What's the outcome? Are you trying to achieve a belt? Are you trying to perfect this kick? Or are you trying to develop practical skills that are going to preserve your health long term? Not only you just internally, but perhaps externally, if you've got a physical threat, you're developing the skills to be able to do that. But the way that you're doing that is not going to cause any lasting damage. In fact, it's going to help perpetuate your ability to continue this for the rest of your life, hopefully. So to me, it's the best of both worlds. You're still learning powerful techniques that have been proven, as you said, with the science, but they're also very easy to apply in a practical world setting to defend yourself.
I think that one of the huge challenges for Choi Kwando instructors is teaching their class. And that might sound like, like an obvious thing, right? But it's to do with finding the right balance, right? So that we can achieve what we want to achieve without overdoing it. So for example, some instructors that I've learned from, they could spend an hour on a block. It's overdoing it. It's overdoing that side. And so with my experience of Totalfit Defense and the stamp, the ratio of self-defense training to other components is really clear in the session. And I think that it's a very positive balance. It's a different balance than what I usually teach, because I teach in my Choi Kwando teaching style is very similar to Totalfit Defense teaching anyways. Yeah. But we focus a bit less on fitness side. We have less structure around the kind of intangibles, the personal development, and more focus on the self-defense. But it can vary week by week and class by class. So in terms of the relationship between Totalfit Defense and Choi Kwando, I think that Totalfit Defense is a really positive way, a really great structure for people who don't have 25 years of experience in Choi Kwando. From what I saw, the amount of resources there and the amount of structure there was really positive. How do you see it? You're a veteran martial art instructor in the Marine Corps martial art program. How is it being an instructor of Totalfit Defense and the resources that you have available?
I think, again, it comes down to what are you after? Like, we're not trying to get people to master a technique. We want people to have a working knowledge, a familiarity that they can draw on should the need arise. And so that helps, I think, influence what we're trying to do, how much time we give to a basic technique. So if somebody has the basic pattern of a block down, I'm okay with that, as long as it's effective. And they know that from the get-go. And so I think, in terms of like resources and things like that, how we spend our time during the course of a training is very balanced, I think, and you're not going to get a lot of hours in the seat, so to speak, in certain aspects. but you're getting a good dose of things to continue keeping at sort of the forefront of your mind. So next time we gather next week, we're going to build on what we learned. Yeah, there's probably a more review than would be here because there's a deeper knowledge base here, but we're also we're broadening the aperture, bringing back in some of the other things. Okay, you said you were going to do this in terms of this healthy habit. How did you do with that? Like that accountability piece that's missing across the board in a lot of things today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are the things that I want to lean into more as an instructor. I want to make sure that people realize that this is not just a physical aspect. This is not just learning. And a lot of people come in going, when do we get to the cool stuff? I wanted to learn this kick and that kick. I'm like, yeah, I could direct you to another resource, you know, that kind of thing. But we're going to focus on all of these things every time that we're together. And I'm going to lean into more of the development of the intangible stuff by just asking some accountability questions along the way.
That's your role as a spiritual leader, right? As a vocational, was it vocational clergy? Is that what you said?
Yeah, vocational pastor.
Vocational pastor. Yeah, that's where it really comes out, right? That side, that's your space. That's what brings it along. And so I wanted to come back to what you said about working knowledge, the difference between working knowledge and mastery. I don't think that the general public understands enough the time commitment difference between developing a skill, a self-defense skill, to working knowledge versus to mastery, because they are absolutely astronomically different. And it's, so Krav Maga, right? Krav Maga, it was a self-defense system developed by the Israeli Special Forces. It's widely touted as one of the best self-defense systems. It's certainly one of the most thorough. And my good friend, Master Jose Luis, he brought me to assistant instructor course. We were guests while I was doing my internship in Buenos Aires. We were guests. We learned from Yanilov, a very famous like pioneer of Krav. And so Master Jose Luis, he ended up going down that path because we had the question as Choi Kwando people, do we need to incorporate some of their learnings to improve our ability to teach self-defense? They're the self-defense specialists. They're mono-focused. We're the holistic guys. Do we need to borrow and incorporate? Do we need to lean on them? And his conclusion, and he's a really, really great martial artist with a lot of experience. His conclusion was that with Choi Kwando, you can solve about 90% of most problems. You can get around them with the more limited tool set. He said that extra 10%, to be able to competently deal with the extra 10%, he said you're thousands of hours of commitment. And you need to stay on top of it because they could attack you this way, this way, this way, that way, this way. They all have different ways of solving them. And Krav, for example, they allocate so much time into the minute details and the exact responses to these various problems. Choi Kwando has a more generalistic view of it, and I think Totalfit Defense really leans on that, saying that, well, Choi Kwando's, it's pretty all round, it's pretty useful in most situations, and if you say that that's our strategy for self-defense, then you've got time. And in Totalfit Defense, you need time. You need time for the other really valuable components. Fantastic. Let's take a moment there, and then we'll come back with the last section.